Cynthia, thank you so much for giving of your time. And it's so lovely to see you after so many years, albeit in a different context. I would love you to tell me about the remit of Ready, Set.
And thank you also, Liz, and lovely seeing you again too after all these years. So Ready, Set is a charitable organisation, and really our mission is to empower individuals who are facing some form of disadvantage and barriers to employment. We essentially provide them with clothing items and career coaching to get them back on their feet and give them confidence to, pursue their pathway back to employment.
Fantastic. And so when you say individuals, it's actually females, males, non-binary, gender diverse individuals?
That's right. We were set up in 2011, so we've been running for about 14 years, and right from the beginning, the volunteers, because it's a volunteer founded and based organisation, they recognised at the time that there was nobody in Australia that was supporting men and women, and of course non-binary and trans people, and so they established this charity to support anyone in need who had faced real challenges in their lives. And so, 14-year history, and in that time we've supported close to 13,000 people.
So can you give us an idea of the sorts of barriers to employment that some of your clients might face, maybe some of their personal histories?
All sorts of barriers and forms of disadvantage. So we get, for example, the youngest people that we support are in the youth category, so they're anywhere between the ages of 15 and 24. And what I see with those young people is that they come from families, sometimes broken families, or entrenched poverty and multi-generational poverty. Some of them have been in and out of the foster care system, or maybe had some run-ins with the law, but usually it is just that they've just had a form of disadvantage, and that has led to them having mental health issues, etc. And that sort of pattern runs through all age groups. Some have the women that we support, either from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, who are sort of struggling both linguistically and culturally to find work, domestic violence survivors. So really, if you try to define what disadvantage means, that's what we encounter here.
So we're talking about people with often difficult circumstances, and even difficult to talk about day to day. Do you think in Australia we're becoming a more inclusive society or less inclusive? Are we seeing a lot of polarisation around these issues of disadvantage? What are you seeing?
Look, I think ostensibly more inclusive, in the sense that we're much more aware of what that actually means, and we've got protections in place through law, and also organisations like ours that are set up to be more inclusive. So I think at that level, I think generally the community is much more aware of diversity and the importance to have diversity, equity and inclusion in not only policy but also in practices. So I think definitely there is a greater awareness, but sadly it doesn't really carry across to all communities and all aspects of our lives. So, and sadly, as we can see, there are sort of steps, rather than taking steps forward, there are some steps that, backwards. So I think in general terms, yes, but not across the board.
Interesting. When I walked into the premises here, I've seen lots of racks of clothing for different people, different ages, different sizes. Can we talk about clothes? How important is dressing and clothing for your clients? Does it really make a difference, or is it superficial? What are you seeing?
Well, No, it's not superficial at all. I mean, look, I think, if you want to distill it, in practical terms, that's what we give people. We provide them with clothing and accessories, handbags, etc. And it's because they don't have the financial means to purchase these items, and also the confidence to walk into a shop and choose something for themselves. But in fact, it's a lot more than that. We both know what it's like not to look good, and your confidence really drops to the floor without that. Typically someone will walk through the door, they'll have very, very low self-esteem. They don't believe in themselves as a starting point. They don't believe that they've got any potential to front up to a prospective employer, and they don't really. And a big part of that, and obviously there are sort of different facets to this lack of confidence, but a big part of that is that they don't feel that they look the part. They don't have anything in their wardrobe that they feel proud of. And so it really is quite transformative, because people don't walk through the door and we give them a bag of clothing and they leave. They spend close to about an hour with our volunteers, and there's always 2 volunteers that work with them. And the volunteers really work with that person to understand who they are and what their preferences are, what their aspirations are in terms of work, their personal, style, if you like. And they may not have one that they've formed themselves, so they'll guide them as to what looks good on them. So that time spent with volunteers really lifts their spirit, and you can see the difference. I don't work directly with job seekers, but I'll see them at the start and I'll see them at the end, and the transformation's incredible. They head held high. They feel absolutely not only grateful, but just amazed at the quality of the clothing that they've received. So it is really about giving people that confidence and dignity, a sense of dignity and hope in what their future might look like. And we combine the clothing with career coaching, so we have wonderful coaches that work with them to take them through their resumes, do a bit of role play, prepare them for interviews. So I think the combination of the two really, really works.
And I love the fact that you've used the word dignity, because this whole process is about dignity, it's self-esteem, self-perception, isn't it?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's much more than clothes, and I think we sometimes underestimate the impact that good clothing and a bit of time spent with somebody who is respectful. We've had comments come from our job seekers. They've said, this is the first time in my life that I've had someone treat me so respectfully, and who really sees me as a person. And so I think it's a lot more, as I say, it's a lot more than the clothing themselves.
Yeah. I mean, obviously a very, very impactful organisation. But can we talk about you, Cynthia, and in your career path? Because we met each other when we were both working in international education some years ago.
Yeah.
So how did you arrive at where you are today? And can you talk us through the process, the thought process around making that career transition? Because you were very senior in higher education, in international education, but you've left all of that behind. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was a long time in international education, a very rewarding career, but I was ready. I was ready to leave and I think also take the time to reflect on what I wanted to do, if work at all, for that matter.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really healthy thing to do, to take breaks and to spend time thinking about what makes you happy and where you think you can offer the skills that you've developed over the years. So I actually did take that time, and I think it was about 6 months working out whether I wanted to work or not. And then I entered this phase of thinking about, well, let me really think about the skills that I've acquired over 30 plus years in a particular industry and whether I could have anything to offer a new industry, and what would that industry be? And it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking, well, I've sort of been pigeonholed, I've been doing something in a particular area for so long, therefore I've got nothing to offer another sort of sector or industry. But I did actually take the time to think about it carefully, and it was actually through a conversation with a recruiter, and I was actually speaking to a recruiter not because there was a job going, it was more just to get a sense from them whether somebody in international education had anything to offer anywhere else. That was really my main purpose for having that conversation. And it was actually one of the recruiters that said to me, "Oh my goodness, you'd be amazing for a not-for-profit," right? Because not-for-profits need people who have the sort of general management and leadership skills that you've got, that have worked in quite sophisticated sort of levels within an organisation. So they've got the commercial, the marketing, the sort of the leadership experience, as well as customer service, obviously, in international education. But that can really, that's what not-for-profits need. And that was just a thought bubble. And and then with Ready Set, I'd had a history. I'd done some volunteering for them previously, and it was in the sort of grant application kind of area. I never really got involved in a client-facing part of the work that we do. And so I looped back and actually just offered my services again to volunteer. And I think it was at the time the board were quite interested in my background, and before I knew it, I was stepping into the CEO role.
Wow.
So so that's really sort of partly conscious, and some of it just by chance, really. In the 2.5 years that I've been in the role, and I've done a lot of, obviously networking and researching the charity sector that I knew nothing about. I came to realise that actually, yes, this is the sort of skills that I'd acquired over my previous work life are really valuable.
Yeah, and just before you mentioned people, you also mentioned leadership. What advice or what would you say that you've learned about people and leadership, both in an international education context and even right now?
I think that sometimes we don't really think about this over too much when we're working with people, but that everyone has a story and everyone has a backstory, and sometimes we may judge people's behaviours just based on what we see in front of us, but we really don't take the time to think about their backstories. And this job in particular has taught me that people who experience disadvantage, and obviously it's much more evident to us because they're the people that deal with us, but they all have a story. Something has happened in their lives to lead them to their current circumstances. And I think that concept of everyone has a story, and for us to feel compassion and understanding that everyone does. They've all got a backstory, something's happening in their lives. I think it's really meaningful as a leader to reflect on that. Why is a person behaving in a way that they're behaving? What guidance and support can I give them, acknowledging that there are personal circumstances that I'm not aware of.
And do you think throughout your career you've become increasingly empathetic towards people, your staff?
Well, I think in early years of management and leadership, you just don't have that level of awareness, and I think you take things at face value. You're obviously task focused, results driven, believe you've got to manage performance and all those things that leaders are told that they have to do. But actually, if you just took the time to pause and reflect, and I think give people the benefit of the doubt and actually find ways of supporting them through their work. I had a situation many years ago of someone who wasn't performing all that well, and I could have done two things. I could have started a performance management process, or I could just sit with that person and say, what's going on here?
Right.
And why, what can we do to sort of get you through to a point where you're meeting expectations? And that person pretty much said that they were bored and lacked motivation, right? So I gave them a more challenging role, which was almost a reward. But it worked. It turned that person around. So I think this is just a small example of just taking the time to listen and understand people's stories,
and asking those open-ended questions. Such a simple technique. But of course, at Ready Set, you've got 70 volunteers, is it? So I'm wondering, how is it different? Volunteers versus paid staff, because it must be different.
It is different. It's different, but equally, I guess, we rely on volunteers. They're our employee base, if you like. But it's different in the sense that people are giving their time to us. We're very fortunate here at Ready Set. We've got fantastic retention rates, and we attract new volunteers almost on a weekly basis. So the volunteers are motivated by the social aspect. There's a social aspect to that, but also they just want to give back, and they are very generous. On average, our volunteers give us at least one day a week, and some more than that, and they really step in when we need them outside of that time. So I think it's similar in the sense that we've got a business to run, if you like. We've got clients that we need to sort of support. So we need the regularity and the commitment, and also I guess following our policies and procedures and all those things that would happen in a normal workplace. But it is different because there's not a transaction here. There's no salary involved, and so and just respectful of the generosity and that comes from the heart of the volunteers who give us their time.
So thinking again about yourself and your journey, what advice would you have given a younger or young Cynthia Kralik? You're always youthful, by the way. But what advice would you have given your younger self?
It's interesting. I think obviously with age, you become more confident, and you've got the benefit of years of experience where you've seen where you've done things well and where you haven't and could improve. So you've got all that sort of history, if you like, that you can draw on and experience. But I think when I think back, and probably up until relatively recently, that sort of either imposter syndrome or the lack of confidence. I know that I used to look at my senior bosses and think, oh my goodness, I could never do the job that they could do, that they're doing, and couldn't see that I would ever get to those levels. And I think what I would say is no, just do it, because leadership is there are wonderful programs that you can do that teach you about leadership, but it actually is just being in and experiencing, and a lot of very senior people are learning as they go, and that's the reality. So I think it's just, don't doubt yourself. That's what I would tell myself. Don't doubt yourself. Step in and have confidence. And that motivation and a touch of good intellect and having an inquiring mind and, wanting to learn goes a long way. And you don't need to be have years and years of experience to step into a senior role. So I think that's really what I would say to myself, just confidence.
I love that, Last question, and I ask this question because I think Melbourne has been the most locked down city in the world, if we think of COVID-19 times. And we've talked a lot about, suffering, dark times and triggers. So, I want to flip that and ask, what sparks joy for you? You can be as broad or as specific as you like.
I don't know if this is an innate quality of mine, but yes. I'm really grateful. And I think gratitude is a big thing. So I'm very grateful for everything that surrounds me, whether that's the people that I meet and know and love, or my family, or my surroundings. I think all of these things bring me joy. So a simple walk along the beach for me brings me joy. Having a great conversation like this brings me joy. Work brings me joy. And I think it stems to being grateful for what I've got. And there's a fantastic person, Hugh von Gullenberg, I think. He's started the Resilience Project. And this organisation looks at how you can help people become more resilient, and particularly young people. And he's drawn a very close link to happiness and gratitude. And the three are really linked. And I think that if you're, what he says, and that really resonates with me, is that if you're grateful for what you've got, rather than anxious about what you don't have or envious of others, but you're grateful for what you have, that leads to happiness, and that ultimately leads to resilience. And so I think that, it's a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, Liz, but I actually think that a lot of things bring me joy, and it's because I'm really grateful for the life that I've been given and that I continue to have.
Fantastic. Well, Cynthia Kralik, very grateful to have been able to speak with you today.
I hope I've sparked some joy.
You certainly have. And so thank you very much, and it's been a real pleasure.
Absolute pleasure too. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks.